Sabah kalktığımdan ilk olarak Allah'a yalvarıyorum. Elimi yüzümü yıkıyorum. Çoluğuma çocuğuma dua ediyorum. Alışverişe gidiyorum, motorumla gidiyorum, yürüyemiyorum. 30 sene oldu geleli. Hiçbir kötülüğüyle karşılaşmadım. Ben geldim buraya. Bundan işte 1-2 ay kaldım. 6 tane çocuğum vardı. Çok zor şartlardaydık. 6 tane çocuğum var. 9 tane torunum var. Allah'ıma çok şükür.
Residents of Amsterdam's Bos-en-Lommer district all have a history as similar as the blocks of flats in this neighbourhood. Even though they migrated here a long time ago, there has been little contact with the native Dutch. The immigrants here have carefully upheld the traditions and customs of their faraway homeland, putting little effort into learning the local language.
Good morning. Welcome to Holland. I come from Turkey, and I am a Turk, but I live in Holland, and I feel very good here. When I leave this place for a long time, I really miss it, and I want to come back to Amsterdam, to Bos-en-Lommer.
A completely different way of life can be found only a few tram stops away from Bos-en-Lommer. Amsterdam could compete with New York for the title of modern Babylon. More than 200 ethnic groups live here. The whole of post-war Holland has been working hard to build the image of Europe's most tolerant country. It legalized soft drugs and prostitution, as well as same-sex marriages. Freedom of opinion and liberty are the core values of the modern Netherlands.
As you can see here, the coffee shops, the alcohol, and Islamic State, this will be all banned, inshallah. So there will be no free drugs consumption, there will be no free alcohol consumption on the streets. So the youth will be protected, so they won't be doing harmful things.
These young people are representatives of the Islamic organization Sharia for Holland. There are groups of this kind all across Western Europe. Only recently did Great Britain ban a similar group of Islamists. The chief mission of these Orthodox Muslims is to establish Sharia law.
There's no combination between democracy and Sharia. It's either democracy or Sharia.
Abu Qasim is the 29-year-old leader of Sharia for Holland. Even though he is actually of Moroccan descent, Abu Qasim was born in the Netherlands, schooled here, and is fluent in Dutch and English. But at the same time, he rejects Western values and meticulously observes all the rules of the Quran. For instance, he will pray in any place, even in the city centre.
Every place is good for praise. If it's clean, then you can pray there. The sad thing is that even Muslims think that you can't pray everywhere. That has to do with the kind of mentality that the Muslims have nowadays. They are ashamed to be Muslim. They don't know what Muslim is. That is the reason is because they live for 20, 30, 40 years under non-Islamic government.
For the Muslims that are already in our societies, I have a very clear message. Either you adopt to our values and our laws and our constitution, and then you are equal as anybody else, and we will even help you to integrate. But if you don't, if you cross the red line of violence or wanting to implement Sharia or any other terrible thing, then we have to either put you in jail or expel you out of our countries.
In the summer of 2010, the Freedom Party, headed by Geert Wilders, came third in the parliamentary elections in the Netherlands, having received 23 mandates. Wilders is known for his right-wing views and harsh criticism of Islam. His film Fitna demonizes the Quran, comparing it to Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf.
The problem with Holland is that we were too long too tolerant. We should stop the immigration of people from Muslim countries. We should stop the Islamic symbolism. I wouldn't want to have more mosques in the Netherlands. I want Islamic schools to be closed, let the people integrate with other children from other religions or public schools or whatsoever. And I want that we have tough penalties to people who are committing crimes. Send them away, send them out of Holland.
My kids play computer games all day long. They only speak Dutch, and for us it can be a problem. They will also have to learn English. Children can manage it, but sometimes it can be difficult. They speak their native language at home, and then at school they communicate in Dutch.
Aref's journey to Holland was not an easy one. The Afghan artist had first to escape from his war-torn homeland to Russia. There he received an education in art, and then he decided to move to Europe.
Before I came to Holland, I had never heard of a black school or a white school, or what's a Moroccan mosque, a Turkish mosque or an Afghan mosque. What's that? For me, a mosque is a place where all Muslims can come to pray. Why split them?
Aref decided from the very beginning that he would not live in immigrant ghettos. He settled down with his family in the small town of Arnhem, began studying Dutch, and entered the local art academy. Now he earns a living by teaching the basics of painting.
There was a time when people started looking at us as if we were members of the Taliban. After the 9/11 attacks, many Muslims, especially Afghans, had to go through some hard times. Back then, many were saying that all Muslims were terrorists and that they were all linked to Al-Qaeda. Many things of the sort came out in the open. For example, a couple of years ago, a Dutch filmmaker was killed by a Muslim, which gave rise to a major conflict between the Muslims and the Dutch.
In 2004, filmmaker Theo van Gogh was murdered in Amsterdam. His killer was Mohamed Bouyeri, aged 26, an ethnic Moroccan member of the Hofstad Network terrorist organization. The reason behind the murder was the director's film Submission, which revealed the humiliations women in the Islamic world have to go through.
Oh, Allah. The verdict that has killed my faith and love is in your holy book. Faith in you, submission to you, feels like self-betrayal.
On July the 26th, 2005, Mohamed Bouyeri was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole.
Elvira Street praat, vandaar dat Gikkels via de beat praat. De officier draait in het rond. Aap uit de mouw, stop met je stront over hip-hop geweld, ik stond ver...
This Surinamese rapper prefers to be called by his stage name, Gikkels. The main theme and inspiration behind his work is his beloved district of Amsterdam, Belmore.
Politicians from the city council told against journalists and reporters that the people from Belmore were like apes, because there were a lot of shootings. We had 12 or 13 shootings in a year, and his reaction was like, the mentality of the people is a cave mentality. And I was like, how dare you speak about my people at that way, at that manner, with that tone. So I wrote a song, and all the big papers called me, and I was in front of all of the big papers, and everybody spoke about that particular situation.
Now this area is marked on the maps of Amsterdam as the southeast, but the locals still call it Belmore out of habit. It was designed and built in the 1960s. The architects dreamt of building the city of the future. Huge apartment blocks, plenty of space for parks and footpaths as an alternative to the crowded city centre of Amsterdam. However, it was not Dutch natives that settled down in Belmore. Immigrants from Africa and former Dutch colonies began moving into the southeast of the capital.
In 1973, apartments in Belmore were overcrowded. But in 1975, Suriname became independent, which led to even greater overcrowding of residential houses. Troublesome groups often come to Belmore because it is easier to find housing here than in the rest of Amsterdam.
In Belmore, it's possible to encounter over 150 different ethnicities. The situation is the same in Bos en Lomme. Many immigrants have lived here for 10 years, but they have still not learned the language. The majority are not so interested in adopting the Dutch way of life.
We're from Suriname, so the way of living in Suriname is a whole different way of living in Holland. We're familiar. Like when you come to my house, I have 4 meatballs and I'm with a wife and a child. And when you come as a friend, I still have 1 meatball. Because we're a big, happy family. In Holland, the Dutch people, when you come in their home, they only have 3 meatballs. And when you come, there's no meatball for you. And they're greedy, they're greedy.
Ibrahim is a devout Muslim from Turkey and always goes to the mosque on Fridays. Ibrahim is temporarily unemployed. Therefore, he can devote the rest of his day to walking around the neighborhood he lives in, Bos en Lomme. These few streets are all that he sees of not just Amsterdam, but the rest of Europe. His favorite cafe and a Turkish wedding dress shop owned by his sister are located here.
Our family, like many other community members here, comes from Turkey. Yes, I attended a Dutch school, but I have always communicated with Turkish people, and we also speak Turkish at home. And I behave the same way other Turks do. I go to Turkish weddings, Turkish coffee houses, and celebrate Turkish holidays.
This Friday, Ibrahim is lucky. He has been offered a job singing at a Turkish wedding. Becoming a professional singer has been his dream for a long time now. Ibrahim sings in Turkish. This is the only kind of music his family and friends listen to.
I entered an art school here. I passed the exam. I did everything that I was required to do, but they simply did not let me continue studying. It was very difficult. I was the only dark-skinned guy at school then, and it was impossible to find another place. That was a terrible experience for me, when the teacher stood in front of the class and said that white students were supposed to attend white schools, while black students were to go to black schools. I asked the teacher, "What do you mean by a white school and a black school? How could you distribute people to different schools by the color of their skin?"
But Arif managed to get into another art school, graduate, and now even stages his own exhibitions. One of his installations was a model of his native city of Kabul, made out of cardboard boxes. Over the years he has lived in Holland, it never occurred to Arif to move closer to his countrymen.
If you live in your small world, then you're not part of the society. Yes, politicians say that we live in one country, that Europe is one, and that nobody is discriminated. But then you discover that it's often quite the opposite. If you look at such neighborhoods, you will see that the Turks and the Moroccans huddle together. Why? Why do they want to live closer to each other?
Good day, good day. It is 2 minutes to 3. Radio Razo is with you on 103.8 and 105.2 FM. Hello to everyone listening to us and to the southeast of Amsterdam.
Radio Razo is the voice of Belmore. It deals with the issues, gossip and news of the neighbourhood. Razo is run by Surinamese migrants. They try to keep their finger not just on the pulse of their own people, but on every small immigrant community.
Radio Razo is a multicultural radio station, and it is out here for all ethnicities. It is not only for the Surinamese, but it is via the Surinamese that we try to reach out to all the other communities, as we also have African programs and Indonesian programs. We are very multicultural.
At this market next to the city council, one can meet representatives of all the ethnic groups living in Belmore. Dozens of languages and dialects are spoken here. It has been 10 years since Rajesh moved to Europe from one of the northern states of India. He sells vegetables here. In the past, Rajesh did not even think of learning Dutch. English was quite sufficient, but not anymore.
Living here, I have to learn the language. If I learn the language, then I know very well, very good. Then I can read my letters, I can read everything. If I don't speak Dutch, that's the problem. I contact with the customer.
Waar woon je? Waar woon je? Dan ben je, want je wilt weten waar ik woon. Dus je begint met Satish en...
Now Rajesh attends language courses. Immigrants from Africa, Asia and Latin America sit at the desks next to him. The Dutch name for the program is inburgering, or integration. In other words, this is not just a language course, but also a way to incorporate foreigners into Dutch society as much as possible.
I think that the compulsory language training helps. We are now facing the following situation. I sometimes have to deal with students who have lived in Holland for 10 years or longer and who have never considered it necessary to learn Dutch because it was not compulsory. And they have lived here for 10 years, and no matter what I tell them, they do not understand a thing. I'm sorry that this is so, but when they are required to learn it, I see that after 6 months they at least start to understand me.
The small city of Arnhem is coloured orange today, much like the rest of the Netherlands. The national football team is playing their first match at the UEFA European Football Championship. As usual, neighbours gather together in the courtyard to watch the game. Everybody knows each other here, as many are members of the same far-right party.
In the past weekend, we joined the National Democratic Party of Germany in protest of the leftist policy. We are fighting for a Dutch society without immigrants. All criminal immigrants must be sent back.
On June the 3rd, 2012, the German city of Hamburg saw massive clashes between right-wing radicals and anti-fascist activists. German and Dutch nationalists plan to march through the streets to protest against the policy of multiculturalism in Europe. Representatives of left-wing organisations attacked the column of the right-wing activists. Following the massive clashes, dozens of people were injured and 700 arrested. Constant Koesters, the leader of the Dutch People's Union, is also watching the football match together with his supporters. Even the most tolerant Dutch refer to him as a neo-Nazi. Koesters and his followers dream of a Netherlands without foreigners.
The idea of multiculturalism in the Netherlands, as well as throughout Europe and throughout the world, in fact, has been a flop. You begin to notice that people are forced to live in certain areas of the city. Take Moroccans, for instance. Moroccans cause us a lot of headache. At some point, we want to get back to the situation we had before, when we were the leaders of our country.
The Dutch team lost their first match 1-0.
We think it's time waste. Because we as Muslims, we believe that we have a limited of time. The media gives you football, so everyone is playing football, everyone is watching football. It's just poison for the people.
Abu Qasim, the leader of the Sharia for Holland movement, denounces football and all the other values of Dutch society. In the apartment he rents, he is preparing for another protest in the centre of Amsterdam, together with his friend. Young Muslims often gather in the capital, but sometimes the outcome is unpleasant. During one of his last sermons, Abu Qasim was attacked by a passerby. The police are suspicious of the Islamists and frequently check their documents.
Because we saw society like it is here in the West, because we have a Dutch education, a European Western education, because we have Dutch friends, we went back to our Islamic roots and discovered that there is a much more and a better system and a better way of life, and that's the Islamic way of life. Then we put both things next to each other and we compared and we saw that the Islamic way of life, the Islamic system, is the best system.
After he began to dress in traditional Muslim clothes in public, relations with Abu Qasim's neighbours soured.
I was always good with the neighbours. I lived here like for 4.5 years. But, and they know me like how I was. But on the reaction you see that they suddenly don't say hello anymore. Suddenly look weird. To be honest, I really don't care. I pay my rent. But the problem is with Muslim sisters, and we have now a lot of calls and emails from Muslim sisters who are saying that they can't walk anymore with a hijab or a proper Muslim clothing for a woman on the streets.
In January 2012, the Dutch Parliament signed a law banning the wearing of masks in public. The law concerned primarily niqabs and burqas, items of female Muslim clothing. The fine for violating the law is €400. This move sparked sharp criticism from Dutch Muslims.
I don't care what those women think, but I also do it for them. I don't do it out of hatred or anything else. I really believe that if you wear a burqa in Holland, that you will have a very tough time to integrate. Young Muslim women should be independent in Holland. This is what I'm fighting for. And if you wear a burqa, please believe me, you will get no Dutch friends. You will get no job. It will be very difficult to find any job.
When I go to Amsterdam city center, I always feel that I've ended up in a completely different world. There are a lot of Dutch and a lot of tourists there. There is a chasm between the rest of Amsterdam and my Bos en Lommer. When you're in this district, you feel like you were in Turkey.
In the neighbourhood of Bos en Lommer, immigrants adjust to the European way of life through the help of art. Volunteer artists can rent out an apartment in this disadvantaged area at practically no cost. But to give back to society, they participate in public programmes with the Turkish and Moroccan community. Artists Kelly and Joanne are the heads of one such project, called Bookstore. Today they are playing with local kids and teaching them the importance of keeping streets clean.
This doesn't work. Just say, okay, you have to change. And if you say, okay, we are going to offer you something, and let's see what you think about this and what you think you can do about the problems in the area. Like the problem is the trash, which is thrown away all the time. And then we clean it with the kids. But the people, they say, well, in our culture, it's normal to throw things away because you're not allowed to keep everything for yourself. So this is the way we do it. And then we have to explain, yeah, we can understand that this is the way you're thinking, but now all the rats are coming in the area, and this is also not a good thing. So how can we find a solution together?
Most immigrants are willing to attend general meetings and get involved in friendly discussion with the artists. But in the evening, some young Moroccans from Bos en Lommer engage in a completely different form of creative work.
In this building where I live, they broke in 27 times. And people from the neighborhood, they did this. But since I live here, and I live here for 1.5 years, they broke into my house twice. And once I also saw two people breaking in the house on the other corner. But then I called my neighbors, like, okay, I saw these guys, I know who they are. We have to do something as a neighborhood. But no one answered, no one opened the door.
The bride and groom are celebrating their wedding with their 200 guests in the Turkish style, but they are all from Bos en Lommer. It is practically impossible to tell the difference between this wedding in Amsterdam from one in Turkey. The language and traditions from their faraway homeland have all been meticulously observed.
I find Turkish traditions to be cool. Why not? I do not know why, actually. We are accustomed to them. I do not know any Turks following Dutch traditions. There are very few of them. It is almost never the case.
After the wedding, the next morning begins as usual for Ibrahim. He wakes up, prays, and then takes a ride on the tram for a few stops.
This is my stop. I live here.
The people of Bos en Lommer and Belmore live in the same city as the native Dutch. Yet these two worlds exist parallel to each other, like tram tracks. The question for modern Holland and the rest of Europe is whether they will ever meet.